1. About 4 or 5 years ago, I started working at a local convenience store with a kitchen and a drive-thru. This meant that we had a cashier inside, people working in the kitchen frying chicken and making other foods, and also 1 or 2 people working in the drive-thru, running around grabbing heaps of whatever the customer was too lazy to walk inside for. One fine evening, I had been tasked to work in the drive-thru while someone I knew from high school had been positioned to restock the beer and pop coolers. It was pretty awesome because at around 10:30, the frequency of customers dropped dramatically, which made my night quite some bit less stressful along with the guy working in the coolers, who we'll call CG for cooler guy. However, we had the misfortune of working with a bipolar 60-some-year-old, mostly pissy and bitchy woman who was positioned in the kitchen. Now, when working in the kitchen during the night shift, your job is simple. Clean and make sandwiches that customers order. We'll call her Raging Bitch. Toward 10 p.m. it got a smidge slower for me and CG, so every now and then he'd walk through to the drive-thru to grab more beer to stock. The back stock beer cooler is behind the drive-thru, and would just make casual conversation while walking to get what he needed without stopping. No problem, right? Hard no. Raging Bitch asked him to do 3 or 4 things, about half of her responsibilities for the evening, which were the more time and effort consuming ones, because she wasn't feeling too well. Might I add that she pulled this stunt nearly every shift she worked, to go home early and get stoned. So CG politely and kindly says something like, "Sorry, Raging Bitch, but I'm still trying to catch up on the coolers. OP had a non-stop rush out there with cars out to the road and is finally slowing down a little bit out there." By the way, if more than 3 cars are in line, the positioned kitchen worker is to help the drive-thru worker until it's either empty or there are no more than 2 cars in line. She ignored the motion sensor bell that went off every time a car came in, or sat in front of it waiting, and ignored the constant line of cars out to the road. You might be thinking, OP, chill out. How the hell is she supposed to know how many cars are in line? Well, the store is notorious for having a plethora of security cameras covering everything, except the inside of the bathroom, which means that there were plenty of cameras pointed at the entrance with numerous televisions displaying that live feed right above the kitchen area where Raging Bitch was working. At that point, I guess Raging Bitch contacted our boss, who was also the owner, and told him how OP and CG weren't doing anything but standing in the drive-thru talking while ignoring customers, and cussing a line which in turn forced her to help and put her behind schedule. This caused the boss man to drive to the store and berate me and CG while telling us that we're fucking disgraces of employees, and how we should be thanking him every day for the amazing opportunity handed to us. Basically, he hired us and we should be sucking him off daily for hiring us. After the tantrum he threw, he said,
"That's it. Not another word between the 2 of you. If I or any of your co-workers catch you speaking even a single word, I will kick your ass out the door."
Which obviously pissed us off. However, he had no idea how much we loved being assholes. For the next 3 weeks to a month, we didn't speak a single word to each other, but purposely switched positions around so we were working together in the kitchen. I guess people had been calling in and praising Boss Man for his compassion to hire the differently abled, and how the 2 deaf and mute gentlemen were so helpful without even speaking to not only each other, but to everyone. We cranked it up a notch to everybody after week 2, and the other employees were on board with it. This caused Boss Man to rush in and ask what the hell we thought we were doing. I tapped CG on the shoulder and showed him the notepad and pen, and signaled that I was going to write out what I would say. By the way, we just used hand signals for everything, which got ridiculously over the top and hilarious, and the dipshit citizens of the town thought it was sign language. I wrote something along the lines of, "You told us not to talk or you'd kick our asses out." Which CG wrote, "Yeah, I was taking a Snapchat and saved it. Wanna see and hear it?" I loved that asshole. He played it non-stop for everyone to hear. I finally wrote, "Check the security cameras from that night." So about a week later, Boss Man comes in with his mom, who was great friends with my grandmother. The look of embarrassment made me laugh so hard that I damn near pissed. I guess his mom technically owns the business, but he is the face of the business and part owner, so he was always telling her what was going on, and she wasn't too happy when she heard what he said, and was even more pissed when she watched the security footage with him. After I got done laughing at the look on his face, he started saying how Raging Bitch had made up a huge lie and had pissed him off. His mom had said something like, "I'm so sorry my son had to act like such an ass, honey. Since you had to get treated like that, I think it's only fair you get to speak your mind about it." This woman knew the lengths of my vulgarity and frequent use of it, and had to have known to an extent what was coming. For about 30 minutes, I got just within kissing distance of him, and proceeded to make obscene and vulgar gestures in front of him, while writing things like, "You sure must feel like an ass," and "You could have talked to us like employees instead of being a dick." In short, I didn't speak a single word, but wrote enough and made enough gestures to let him know, "Fuck you, dude." 2. This happened today, actually. I just started college and my store manager was made aware when I started that I would have to work around school, which is now Tuesday and Thursday with weekend tutoring. Due to life and the resume that got me the job, I missed a lot of schools and needed additional tutoring to catch up, and fast. This was my dream, and I talk about it more than anything else with everyone at work. As some background on the store manager, she chewed me a new one once before because she asked if I would work a Friday shift. I said I might, but let me check my schedule. It turned out that would have made it an 8-day week for me, with 1 day off and another long week. So I said no. She went off on me about how I was a terrible person and a lazy worker, and the job is give and take and I'm not being flexible, and it's only a 38-hour week. They taper schedules so no one gets close to overtime when the week rolls over, but everyone works odd long hours. And she only looked at the current week's total. I explained my schedule to my department manager, and she was fine with me working Monday, Wednesday, Friday during school, as I've been working weekends and any random day changes every week since I started almost 8 months ago now. So I was surprised to see my schedule changed to work Sunday. I spoke to the store manager and she said she had changed it and I won't lose good workers because it isn't fair to other employees that you don't work weekends. As if me not working weekends in my department would matter to anyone, as my co-workers don't mind the weekend shifts at all, they enjoy weekdays off, and it was entirely fine. I reminded her that when I started I told her that my schedule would have to work around school, and she said that's perfectly fine. She replied that she had said I would have to work some weekends. I've worked every weekend for 8 months. She went on to say I had to work weekends or find a different job. So I cleaned up, closed and left 2 hours early. After turning in my name tags and hat with a flat, I quit to the manager on duty, surprising the heck out of her, while parading around the store with my green hair. Against policy. So, now they are down one of their 3 fully trained workers. The other is in school taking 5 courses this semester, and the third is already full-time. We've had several new hires since I started, and they all quit, transferred, or just can't do the job. The manager in my department recently changed as well to someone new at managing, and I was one of the few workers to catch praise from the store inspector that comes in every few weeks. Not to mention I was the only one cross-trained in another department that was understaffed and frequently needed my help on short notice. I'll be looking into working at the school tomorrow. 3. This all started when a roommate told me that they had a high school acquaintance that was looking for workers, shortly after my last job ended in the middle of summer. The job was in the automotive industry at a used car dealership, repairing wrecked cars. I was hired shortly after an interview. I was then given a 1099, legally very different from a W-4. It means that I was titled as a contractor, not an employee. Seemed like honest work, and I was glad to do it. Upon being hired, I was told as much work as I could handle, and that I could make between $800 and $1,200 a week. It was a piecework job at $400 a car. That's pretty good for a young guy, especially when trying to get a mechanical engineering degree. I knew I would expect less when I returned to school in the fall, but I still felt I could do $400 a week while in school. Things started out alright. I got trained for a day, I helped people for free, didn't learn much except the company process. I was getting a few lightly wrecked cars to work on. The company was just switching to this business model, so things were a bit choppy, but I figured it'd all get straightened out. Things seemed a bit off here and there, but nothing alarming. At least not for a while. There were small things, the lack of a focus on quality, cheap and thin paint, that sort of thing. I was given a couple of my own cars and then an unfinished project of a former employee. I tore apart cars, and parts were ordered for me, as was the plan at the time. Then waited on parts then came, and I replaced them with the tools available to me. This process continued for a while. It was lumpy and surely flawed, but not broken. After a short time of that process, they got a vehicle from auction that would normally be considered totaled. Self-insured companies can do this without affecting the title status. Repaired it, and then sold it. This put the figurative scent of blood in the water. The profit was so good that they changed their whole business model to suit. This, of course, was worse on my peers and I. Instead of smaller things like bumpers and fenders, we had much more work to do. They had to bring in frame specialists and heavy equipment for the heavily damaged vehicles. Now the process included gaining a parts list without access to actual list of available parts, and often were not fulfilled properly. Then waiting for the specialist to straighten out the frame as well as possible, then do our work. Somewhere along here, cars stopped becoming available to work on. For a time, out of the 45 plus hours I was there, I spent 70% of my time waiting for others. Then things started getting even worse. I was expected to drive unsafe, damaged vehicles from the auction to the shop. I heard about an SUV that literally had 40% of the body steel and a whole corner of suspension replaced that was sold. The customers were told that it was being painted because the previous owners backed into a mailbox. It was there being repaired since before I had started, more than a month earlier. On a Friday, I was shortly let go. The reason given was my upcoming school schedule. I was gone twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday. I had 2 cars that I had prepared a week previous and was waiting on others so that I could finish. I asked what I would be paid for them, and was told I'd get paid half for each car. I begrudgingly accepted. I was told to return on Monday to pick up my check. I attempted to do so, but my manager was not there. I talked to the receptionist and PR lady, who directed me to the GM of the store. The GM then basically told me to go F myself, because I was contracted per car and had not finished those cars. Obviously, at this point, I was becoming more than irritated. I called my manager multiple times. No answer, so I left a voicemail threatening a legal suit. No answer, no reply for a long time. I asked my father-in-law, who happens to be a lawyer, to help me press charges. He directs me to the government agency that oversees this thing. I then do all my legal research, find out that I am right, and I was employed in an illegal manner, which my job description almost exactly mirrored the textbook example of an employee, not to be contracted. I petitioned this court with this information, asking for the 2 full cars payment. They gave both parties 60 days to settle it and even offered to mediate. They chose not to. The info I gathered was forwarded to the company, who rebutted with the "cars weren't finished" line. I then received an opportunity to clarify. I added information as needed, being more focused on my situation and less on general law. Then I waited and waited and waited and waited some more. Finally, I received a letter informing me that I had won the full $800, and they had 24 hours to send the check, or face a $100 a day fine on top, paid to me. When the check showed up, I cashed it immediately. After I had the cash in hand, I left a review not too different from this post for their business. Late that night, I get a call from an unknown number. I had been applying to internships, so I answered it. It was HR lady. She asked if I had time to talk, and I replied that I did not. She continued to talk anyway. She tried being nice and asking if I would take the review down. It was pretty scathing, and I'm a trusted reviewer. I said that I would not because I felt it was right. Then she tried to butter me up, saying that I had received my check in a timely manner, and how that was so nice of her. I would have preferred to have it later and with more money, but it was still civilish at this point, so I didn't want to take it that far. I remained adamant. She then started to get mad at me, as if that would do anything. Finally, in desperation, she asked me again, saying how her job could be on the line. I told her no, and that I didn't care about that after the way I was treated. Beep, call over. The next day I got repeated calls from my old manager. No voicemail or texts, so I didn't care. One night my wife was talking about something that reminded me of it, and I decided to check the review to see if anybody replied. Nobody replied, but it did say permanently closed. I was so happy, and my wife was very happy for me as well. We had suffered significantly financially, had to move, and emotionally because of them. It was good to see some justice. Later, when I drove by on my way to do something, I got the satisfaction and closure of seeing the empty building with no name on it. Finally, relief and joy. 4. I work in food service, catering to a large cafeteria. One of my responsibilities is to replace the giant boxes of soda concentrate, which are hooked up to the dispensers in another room. Whenever the Boca-Bola or Mesa Moisture runs low, I have to hook up a new box of the stuff so that the customers can have their delicious empty calories. I've done this for long enough to know exactly which concentrates run out the fastest. Our chief offender is Made-Aid lemonade, one of the very few non-carbonated beverages that gets mixed with water at a much higher concentration than other drinks, resulting in this sugary mess that could give hummingbirds diabetes. It's noteworthy that we actually have two kinds of drink dispensers. One kept in a large inline row that you would probably see in every fast food place ever, and several standalone dispensers for our more specialty drinks. About a year back, manager decided to swap out one of our drink mixes that was going out of stock, Whipped Spleen Tea, for a new product, which meant that we had to take down and rebrand one of our standalone dispensers for this new zero-calorie health drink, Yobei Tasty Berry Health Water. That was fine and all, but trouble was on the horizon. See, the drink was a hit, as it was almost unique among all the available drinks in that it didn't contain 700 calories in a glass. And thus there was a significant fraction of our customers who enjoyed taking shots of the nearly flavorless health water, which got the attention of corporate. See, corporate was always looking for ways to cut costs. It's what corporate does. So they decided, in their infinite wisdom, to swap out one of our heavy-duty inline dispenser slots for this new crazed Tasty Berry Health Water. This despite the fact that we already had a perfectly functional standalone dispenser, and that we would need to swap out one of our high-volume products for this health water crap. But the problems didn't end there. We had very few inline dispensers that would mix their concentrate with water, as opposed to carbonated soda. And carbonated soda is bitter. So, if you replaced one of the soda boxes with health water concentrate, what you'd get is a bubbly cup of ass-tasting disappointment, with a faint hint of whatever the hell Tasty Berry is supposed to be. So manager thought about it long and hard, and decided that the only thing to do was to swap out our Made-Aid lemonade with Yobei Tasty Berry Health Water. I believe this to be monumentally retarded. I repeatedly told my manager this, but he wouldn't have it. It was a command from corporate, and corporate knows what customers like. Corporate must be obeyed. So swap the damn lemonade out for the Tasty Berry Health Water, and damn my objections. So I did, and I watched the chaos unfold. The first step, of course, was flushing the line of lemonade to make room for the health water. This involved hours of me being paid to make circuits between the dining hall and the concentrate storage room, slowly siphoning out every bit of the lemonade. And those lines were not designed to change on a dime. The only reason they stop dispensing product when the bags run out is because the suction can't pull the product out of the rigid tubes we use to transport the product from the concentrate room to the dispenser. There are gallons of that crap hiding in the tubing. It takes a lot of time to flush it all out. And once the lines were replaced, I then had to flush out all of the air, which would have sprayed our customers with a vaguely sugary shotgun of fluids being squirted out of the dispenser like a malfunctioning sprinkler. All of which I was getting paid for, thank you very much. Next up was the truly delightful mix of ratios. See, our little standalone dispensers had adjustable levels for the amount of concentrate as opposed to water. And the Tasty Berry Health Water stuff was a ratio of about 95% water to 5% concentrate. But the lemonade dispenser was an inline dispenser, with a set ratio which was more like 70% water to 30% concentrate, which was, to reiterate, the highest ratio of concentrate to water out of every dispenser we had. So all the health water stuff was coming out in this over-flavored stream that was not actually all that bad in my opinion. But to anyone who disliked the taste of artificial sweetener, it was overpowering. And finally, there was the crippling problem of stock. See, corporate in their infinite wisdom figured that despite putting the health water on the inline dispensers, we probably wouldn't need all that much more of the stuff. So they kept delivering it to us in the same quantities as we'd been getting before. Every week, we'd get a 3-gallon box of concentrate to replace what had been chewed through. But here's the clincher. Our Mayday lemonade concentrate comes in 2 boxes of 5 gallons each, on an inline dispenser with 6 times the concentration of the standalone dispenser. Oh, and we didn't have the money to rebrand the standalone dispenser, so it was taken down, which meant that every week we would be completely out of Tasty Berry Health Water within a day of restocking. But we'd also get 2 more giant boxes of lemonade concentrate that we had to put in storage, but couldn't actually use. It was glorious watching customer after customer lodge complaints with management that A, we didn't have their favorite drink, B, the new drink tasted funny, and C, there was never any of the damn new drink in stock. This went on for 2 months, until we had such a collection of lemonade concentrate that we literally didn't have anywhere else to store it. Oh, and apparently, corporate had been running dry on the Tasty Berry Health Water stuff too, because we stopped getting it in our weekly shipments about a month in. To say it was a complete farce does not do it justice. We were getting daily commentary on the stupidity of our selection. I finally asked manager if we could switch back to just serving our damn lemonade. He reluctantly said yes, but we also didn't have time to flush the lines. So I was instructed to just place the lemonade concentrate in there and let the lines self-flush. For weeks we served this weird hybrid of lemonade and Tasty Berry Health Water stuff, until it was completely flushed out of the lines. I, personally, thought it was delicious. 5. This story happened in my 5th year of high school in 2005. The Dutch high school system has 3 tiers of education, with the highest tier, called gymnasium, lasting 6 years and preparing you for university life. Part of our mandatory curriculum was English language, lasting all 6 years and being part of the final exams. By no means did the English class demand that you spoke the language fluently, but it could be quite difficult to pass for some people. One of my classmates in particular had a difficult time getting passing grades for the course, and he would often resort to cheating to get as close to a passing grade as possible. He usually cheated off me. My teacher caught on to him cheating and decided to get back at the guy via me during one of the tests. Let me first introduce the 3 people involved. Teacher, as in revenge teacher or RT. He was from Scotland and spoke with a strong Scottish accent. He wasn't the nicest or best teacher, but he also wasn't the worst. The main thing I remember about him was that he always had the worst hangovers on Monday morning. He would be sweating profusely and have 2 to 3 buttons of his shirt open, even though it was winter and it was close to freezing. Me. There are a few things relevant to this story about me. The first is that I suffer from hearing loss due to a medical condition I suffered from as a toddler. As a result, I taught myself how to lip read. Almost nobody in my private and professional life knows this about me. But RT did. This is relevant for the revenge. The second relevant thing is that I was born and raised in the Netherlands. But a large part of my family on my mother's side is from Australia. This meant that I was exposed to the English language from a very young age. Note, I am by no means a native speaker and am generally bad at learning languages. My passing grades for English were always a perfect 5-7, so 100% or 10 out of 10 in the Dutch system. This was the reason my classmate used me when he cheated. The last relevant thing is that I was known in the school as a mischief maker. I was always looking for ways to stir the place up a bit. The RT knew this, which is why he decided I should sit up front with my desk, directly connected to and facing his desk. 3. Cheating classmate, or CC. He was just not good at English, which could possibly be explained by the fact that he moved to the Netherlands at a young age, and was not a native speaker of Dutch either. He was a nice guy though, and we did get along, so I had no problem with him trying to copy my answers. He was a bit pushy about getting me to allow him to copy my answers though, but I understand. He was just trying to get his high school diploma so he could go study Dutch law, which doesn't really require you to speak English at all. Part of the test for the English class consisted of so-called listening tests. We would be given a sheet containing approximately 25 questions with multiple choice answers, and an audio tape containing multiple 5 to 10 minute conversations would be played. These conversations would be quite difficult to understand, as they often contained speakers with quite thick accents, and also often contained background noise. The conversations were cut into small pieces. They were about 1 minute each. The audio would stop after each piece, and we would have to answer a multiple choice question about each piece. We would sit in individual rows in class, and each row had its own version of the question sheet. The questions were all the same, but the answers were in different orders. There were 3 versions of the sheet, A, B, and C. The third answer option in version A could be the second option in version C, etc. If you had version B, that meant that the people to your left and right would have A and C, to avoid cheating, of course. I was sitting in front of the class, and CC was sitting directly behind me. This meant that he would always have the same version of the question sheet. CC would sit in such a way that he could see which answers I gave, and would copy them 1 to 1. CC would get a couple of perfect scores for the listening test, but he would struggle with all other parts of the class. Naturally, this made RT suspicious, and he would quickly find out that CC was copying my answers. Note, we had the listening test quite often on Monday morning, so RT could chill for a bit and get over his weekend hangover. On to the revenge bit. On Monday morning we came to class and we had another listening test. This time RT wasn't his usual hungover and slow self, but he was quite cheerful and ready to go. For me, this made it suspicious that we were having another listening test. I would soon find out why. Everything started like normal and RT started handing out the different versions of the question sheet. I had version B and CC had version B as well. The first few questions played out, and we would answer the first 10 or so questions, with CC copying all my answers. Remember that my desk was connected to RT's desk, and remember that RT knew about my lip-reading skills. RT used this to apply some perfect petty revenge on CC. After question 10, RT would very quietly replace my version of B test with version C. At this point I knew he was up to something. I looked at him and he inaudibly whispered,
"Play along. You have version C now. I'll write it on your answer sheet afterwards."
As CC was too busy trying not to get caught, he didn't see that the teacher swapped my version of the question sheet. He also, of course, didn't hear my teacher speak. Being the little devil I am, I happily played along, and let CC continue to copy my answers. I even intentionally sat sideways so it was easier for CC to copy my answers. This whole remainder of the test, RT had the biggest shit-eating grin on his face, while CC was copying the answers from version C for his version B test. Once the test was done, RT asked CC how he thinks he did. CC said he was quite confident he would get a high grade. RT smiled and looked at me. I smiled back. A week later, we got our test results back. I got my result first and got a perfect 10 out of 10 score. CC saw that, and it made him happy. A few minutes later, he got his result back, and he scored a whopping 3.2 out of 10. Something like that at least. It was a long time ago. Puzzled by how this could happen, CC wanted to compare answers with me. He must have thought that the teacher made a mistake in correcting. Our answers were identical, of course. RT must have expected that CC would compare his answers to mine. For one final bit of glorious petty revenge, RT wrote on my answer sheet next to question 10,
"If you're going to cheat, make sure you don't get caught."
RT was a glorious bastard in the end. In the end, RT did help CC improve his English, and he did manage to get a passing grade. But barely. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, number 10. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. As it is the weekend, I'm going to keep this a bit short and wrap things up. So I hope whatever you may be doing, you're having a good time doing it, and if it's not your day off, then may your next day off come soon. Okay, and with that I'm off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.